Alright, DraftScience video, yay! The physics revolution. Anyway, we do have a couple of response videos. Unfortunately, they're troll videos. So, do in the morning, and, dimwit in the morning, and all day long. And Warble's on a lot. Made videos, and they're both just horrible. And so anyway, Do in the Morning does this whole spiel about, because I've mentioned the Nobel Prize. Tongue-in-cheek, sort of, but realistically, look, if I'm right, okay, if my little 9 points, my little bullet points are actually correct, then I've outdone Feynman, whose clip I'll play at the end of this video, okay, when I'm done with these two people, I'll play a Feynman clip that just demonstrates, that they had this, 40 years ago, and they threw it away. But anyway, alright, so I'll be outdoing Feynman, redoing Einstein substantially, completely changing to dilation of space, time dilation, new explanation that doesn't have anything to do with time travel, changing absolute motion, E equals mc squared is now m equals e c squared. Makes it completely reversible. Let's see what else. I've basically put Bohr in grammar school. Okay, I mean, he was an asshole, and I'll just be demonstrating that he was an asshole. Susskind, yeah, I just put him in the loony bin, essentially. And so, yeah, I would think I would be entitled. If such a person did such a thing, I think they'd be entitled to the Nobel Prize. I just think so. In physics. Yeah. That's just it. So if I'm right, I'm sorry. I'm entitled. It's just the truth, okay? I've totally revolutionized physics. If I'm right. I mean, it's just a fact. Sorry you don't like the fact, but it is a fact. If I am right. It is profoundly significant in the idea of physics as a contribution to physics. It is outstanding. It's just the truth. So anyway, I'll just play one of her clips. They're just horrible. She doesn't speak really good English. It's just horrible. So after she just plays this game with Nobel Prize crap, so she keeps saying the Nobel Prize Committee will be so amazed to hear blah 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 blah, and she just keeps ragging on that light has no mass, which is a disputable fact in physics. So that doesn't even go anywhere, right? I mean, Einstein's demonstrated that light is bent by gravity. There was no other force to account for the bending of the light. Therefore, mass, you see. And, by what I'm stating is that, well, I'll wait to give the metaphor till I get to the Feynman clip, then you'll better understand the metaphor. Right. So let's just play a little bit of this, just so you get the feel of how obnoxious she is.
Has mass. We can only speculate whether the members of the Nobel Prize Committee will be baffled when they hear that matter is made up of photons which move in a spiral, for example. This is in the theory. Because, as I said, we are not physicists, but we have a vague recollection that light moves only in a straight line.
Right, so she's mocking the idea that light could have no other configurations in space. So, I mean, I could obviously just pull out a fiber optic cable and twist it in all kinds of shapes. I could twist it in the shape of, you're a obnoxious skanky cunt. I could write the light in that shape, and the light will move in that shape. Yes, there are structures and circumstances where light, okay, will have the appearance, okay, of moving in a straight line in a crooked direction. And that's the whole point. Moons want to go in straight directions when they are free. When they're not free, they're not moving straight, are they? But they're still moons, just doing moon things. Alright? So again, I don't want to model the model to gravity and the solar system, because guess what? That's the big universe, and it's different than the small universe. But it's different in only minor ways, in the sense that there's still the same square, round, basic geometry still exists, and that yes, things that normally move straight, okay, in between solar systems or something. If moons were flying between this solar system and another solar system, it would pretty much move in a straight line. That's right, because there'll be nothing to influence it or capture it. But we know there's circumstances, we think, I mean, it can be understood that there's circumstances where that wouldn't be true. So anyway, but that was the substance of her. It was just a mockery premised on facts that aren't facts, right? These aren't facts. The mass one especially. Yeah, well, like I said, the analogy I'll give explains the mass thing so well that there's just no point in me doing it now. I'll wait till I get to the Feynman clip. So anyway, let's get to the other idiot. I'm sorry, the other asshole. I'm sorry. Yeah, these are physics videos. They are. But these people really are obnoxious. Come on, I'm allowed to call naysayers and nitpickers and buffoons some sort of derogatory name, because these people really are just obnoxious. They're not making counter arguments. They're just doing petty mockery from a position of gross ignorance, and they deserve to be mocked. So anyway, warbles on a lot. Who has very little credibility anyway. So let's understand the context. This guy does know some science. It would be I would appreciate him doing a proper analysis. But he's also the guy who says car alternators use 30% of your fuel burn. These are quotes from this guy. So yeah, you got to kind of mock that a little bit, don't you? 30% of your gasoline is being eaten up by your alternator to run your radio and your headlights. Yeah. So anyway, I'll have to pick up the volume on this here. Pick up the volume a little bit. Alright, so we just play the beginning. The rest of it's just... so he just goes on a diatribe that you can't nominate yourself for a Nobel Prize. I don't think I did that. You have evidence that I did that. I'd like to hear it. I did the logical nomination in the sense that if I am right and I have outdone Einstein and, you know, geez, stuck it right in Feynman's little butthole and really killed Bohr, really just wiped him off the map, yeah, that would merit a Nobel Prize. That's just a fact. That's all I'm saying. I'm suggesting that's a logical fact. Yeah.
Good morning, YouTube.
Hello.
Jules on the lot here. I just finished watching a movie posted by Jew in the Morning, announcing that.
Gee, it sounded like Jew in the Morning. That's kind of funny.
Gary Mendham has constructed a pre-scientific theory of everything, wherein he claims that all mass and all matter is composed entirely of photons moving at light speed and travelling in a spiral.
Well, I didn't say all the photons are doing that. I said the end result configuration is that that's what they're caught in some sort of mechanism, okay? I didn't describe every mechanism. I'm not sure of the mechanisms that exactly, you know, oblige certain structures to be maintained. I mean, I'm just saying those mechanisms can come up with if you have a little bit of imagination. I gave an outline and put the word draft in front of the actual mechanisms. I don't think we have to understand the actual mechanisms, but I think they can be described. So again, I did do that. And the point of it is the spiral is like a screw, okay? You can understand that a screw turns each... If I was to take one little spot and put a little bit of ink on one of the screw threads, okay, that as the screw turned, that little piece of ink would be moving much faster than the direction the screw was going in. it would be covering a lot more area, right? Okay, that's the simple principle. So that the speed of light would be maintained by having an orbital spin to the speed of the light, and that you would greatly reduce forward progress of a photon if it was doing this spinning thing. Just as the forward progress of photons is substantially reduced by glass. Right? There's experiments with ice and different things where there's lots of refraction, where there's lots of bing, 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 where the photon gets absorbed and readmitted many millions of times and moves incredibly slowly through the material by appearance. Obviously it's not the same photon as the real catch, but the point is it looks like the same photon from our perspective. And it looks like it moved less than the speed of light because it took so long to get there. And it took so long because it had an erratic path. Now, is that too complicated for warbles? Is it?
Now, spiral either indicates a semi-circular track with either an increasing or a decreasing radius. So
now let's understand radius in three-dimensional space. So it's a three-dimensional checkerboard. That means it's a solid cube of checkerboard spaces, Planck constants. And that the thing will move Planck constant by Planck constant through the three-dimensional space. Now, my critique of this critique is, the obvious critique is, he didn't even watch my video. So he let somebody make a derogatory, petty, mocking video. He takes that seriously, the mocking video, and doesn't even go to the original material to see what was actually suggested and actually proposed. So he basically takes a video of very low authentic credibility, where somebody basically lies about what somebody else has said, and taken it seriously, even though it says it has liar written all over it, and hasn't even gone to the source material. And so he's going to ridicule the source content through a what do you call that kind of evidence? Hearsay of a known criminal, a known petty lying criminal. I mean, what can you say? Gee, you really suck, buddy.
in Menden's photonic particles, particle substitutes, must be either getting larger or getting smaller.
Oh, there he says, just says they must. No, they mustn't. That's the whole point. There doesn't have to be any curvature in space anymore. We don't have to dilate space. We don't have to change space. We just change how many cubes and in what direction the fish swim. So we'll get back to the fish metaphor. But I kind of like that a school of fish is going to be a really good metaphor. You could use a flock of birds, but I just like the idea, the fishiness. I love the fishiness of using a fish metaphor to replace dimpled space and all this. Yeah, the fish metaphor. It just makes it all that much more perfect. Alright, so the rest of his video, well, I'll play a little bit more.
Another definition of a spiral.
Yes, is a helix. Exactly what I said in my video.
Is a kind of a helical spiral wherein the
yes, exactly, it was in my video.
radius of the turn remains the same, but there's either a gain or a decrease in altitude or a movement on the XY axis. So these spiraling photonic particles that Gary had in Mendon must be moving up or down or left or right or forward or backwards in order to be described as spiraling.
Well, of course they would be moving forward. I never said electrons stand still. Well, I mean, they might be able to if they're still in orbit, but I'm just saying that that wasn't my argument.
Perhaps he means orbiting photons, moving in.
Perhaps he doesn't. No, of course, electrons orbit okay, in atoms. But again, that orbit is explained by a different configuration. I'm explaining why photons trapped in electrons can move at variable speed. And what I'm saying is a screw-like orbit or spring-like orbit will accomplish the task. That's all.
Circular or elliptical orbit. And on the strength of this, as conference report mentioned, pre-scientific theory.
Conference report mentioned something? So where the hell's his video? His video didn't come up anywhere. Pre-scientific theory mentioned by conference report? Where? Where's conference report mentioning this stuff? I don't see him in my index, so where did he make this video? Where did he make this statement? Sorry, I just don't see it.
With no mathematics to support it.
There's plenty of mathematics. All the existing mathematics, well, not all of the existing mathematics, but some of the existing mathematics is complete bullshit. Yes, E equals mc squared will certainly still work. The gravity formulas all still work. I could go on.
Gary has apparently tried to nominate himself for a Nobel Prize in Physics.
Okay, so this is what he's saying, is I have apparently tried to nominate myself for a Nobel Prize in Physics. I didn't know I did that. Did you have some evidence? I called the Nobels up and nominated myself. Do you have any evidence of any of these accusations? Oh, no, you don't. So anyway, he just spends the rest of this video explaining that, oh, if you try to nominate yourself for a Nobel Prize, you can't get a Nobel Prize. Oh. Yeah, yeah, whatever. Like I said, my argument is I don't really care whether I get one. I'm not showing up for the ceremony anyway, so I'm not going to be there at the party, and I'm not going to hang out with a bunch of elitist motherfucking cunts. They gave a Nobel Prize to Obama, let's remember that. So I'd still be giving him the finger for that one. So I'm probably not going to play along anyway, but the argument would be, who deserves it, shithead? And if I've just outdone Einstein and Feynman, and I put Bohr and Susskind in grammar school looking like fucking douchebags, then I guess I would deserve one. Ugh, fuck. That's the argument, fuckface. You know, actually, Susskind was apparently a friend of Feynman, which disappointed me. I mean, I disliked Feynman pretty intensely. You know, and Piro used to defend him. And then I watched a ton of Feynman videos, and I gained a certain respect for him, especially in his personal life. He seemed really tragic, and it was, you know, he got over a lot of shit, but, you know, he was kind of glib, and so that's not a good thing either. But anyway, you know, I gained a measure of respect. And then I find out he's hanging out with this Susskind guy who's such a douchebag, and I'm like, how the fuck did he find this guy at all interesting? So that was sort of minus points. Yeah. And I first thought Susskind was pretty cool because, you know, he did these lectures and they were almost understandable. But his later lectures are completely obtuse, and he just doesn't seem to take any account for the fact that what he's saying just sounds like complete, insane, loop-de-doo bullshit. And the holographic crap is just, that's absolutely nonsense. For certain. Oh, let's also understood that the Degrassi Tyson guy. Yeah, I'm turning him into, like, I've put him back in the womb. Yeah. So anyway, if I'm right. So here's the Feynman clip. So this is the good part.
And that tells it how much to move. This is certainly no explanation of the machinery of gravitation. So you might want to look further. And various people have tried to look further. Newton was originally asked, it doesn't mean anything, it doesn't tell us anything. He says, it tells you how it moves. It should be enough, I told you how it moves, not what.
So this is a point that the mathematics describes, you know, mathematics is very valuable in terms of it describes functions. So yeah, they didn't have a model for how gravity works. They just knew the relationship that, you know, the by the measure of 4, you know, gravity gets weaker with distance and mass, proportional to the radius squared inversely to the radius squared, right? So it's a 4 time kind of thing, 4, 16, 32. by those kind of proportions, gravity diminishes or is cut in half. It has a half-life of.
But people are often unsatisfied without a mechanism, and I would like to describe one theory which has been invented for, among others, of the type that you might want, that this is a result of large numbers. And that's why it's mathematical. And I give this theory, perhaps you've thought of it yourself. Every once in a while some student comes running in, he suddenly explains gravitation.
Right, so Stephen Feynman's kind of mocking the idea. Here they have physics, and all these big physicists with their big giant brains seem pretty satisfied not to think very hard about actually describing function or understanding how the mathematics is regurgitated or consequentially created by the function. And he sort of just mocks it. I mean, Feynman did an awful lot of just saying, I didn't think of it, so you're not going to think of it. He did a lot of that kind of arrogant, obnoxious pontificating, that don't bother thinking about models, because if I can't think of one, you won't think of one. He did a lot of that.
Suppose that in the world, everywhere, there are flying through us at very high speed a lot of particles that come equally in all directions. They're just shooting by, shooting by, shooting by, and once in a while hit us in a bombardment. But we and the sun are practically transparent for them, nearly. But some hit, and so it's not completely transparent. And look what would happen.
The completely transparent part seems completely unnecessary, okay? I mean, so if we're talking about maybe photons on the high end of the cosmic ray kind of end, okay? Something like, you know, whatever that, the guy in the wheelchair, the ALS physicist, I don't know why I can't remember his name. That's really rude. I don't like him much either. You know, putting him, well, I shouldn't put him anywhere, right? But they call it the radiation that comes out of black holes after him. They named the radiation that comes out of black holes after him. So yes, we're talking about dark energy. We're talking about photons that aren't traditional photons. I mean, they're somewhere else on the spectrum, either on the far end of the radio wave spectrum or the far end of the cosmic ray spectrum.
If the sun is here and the earth is here, then if the sun weren't here, there would be particles bombarding from all sides, giving little impulses by the rattle of these bang, bang, the few that hit, which would not shake the earth in any particular direction, because there is many coming from one side as the other, from top, from bottom. However, when the sun is here, the particles which are coming in this direction are partly absorbed by the sun, because some of them hit the sun and don't go through. Therefore, the number...
So you get that. So the point being made is there's a wedge from this thing's perspective that goes up like this, like a pie. Okay, and all the pressure waves, you could call them, are pressure particles going through this object to this object would, to some degree, based on the distribution of the mass, be blocked from this thing's view, which means there's no pressure here. So it's like the wing warbles on an airplane. The absence of pressure will cause this to move in the direction of the lowered pressure. So like a wing, it will move. Yeah.
that are coming from this direction toward the earth is less than the number that are coming from the other side, because here they have no opposition from no sun there.
and as would be pointed out, the same will be true for this much smaller object. Is still going to have a gravitational pull on this object, because the same exact effect, obviously much smaller, to this one's center of gravity, the same wedge will be created in inverse, but much smaller.
And it's easy to see, after some mental effort, that the further the sun is away, the less in proportion of all of the particles are being taken out of the possible directions in which particles can come. The solar size appears smaller. And in fact, inversely is the square of the distance. So there will be...
So he just basically said this model is completely consistent with the mathematics of gravity. So it works for the mathematics of the distance rules of gravity.
Therefore be an impulse toward the sun on the earth that's inversely as the square of the distance, and is the result of large numbers of very simple operations, just hit one after the other from all directions. And they,
also to be understood is that mass, okay, so you could have a much smaller object with a denser mass. Mass is going to decide how much will get blocked. So something could be very large, but there won't be as much blocking of the force because the mass is more even, is widely distributed. So this wedge isn't a complete shadow, it's an incomplete shadow. It can have different gradients inside the actual wedge. So I don't want to imply that it's all or nothing. The absorption rate of the gravitational body will be dependent on the distribution of its mass, which will always tend to be moved towards its center. That's how it works. The light stuff goes on the top and the heavy stuff goes in the middle.
for the strangeness of the mathematical relation will be very much reduced because the fundamental operation is much simpler than calculating the inverse of the square of the distance. This machine does the calculating. These particles bounce. Only trouble with it is that it doesn't work.
Okay, so that's a great joke, right? But joke's on him, right? Because it does work. And so here he's just pointed out that this machine, this model, okay, gives you a visualization of what's happening that makes the math completely coherent, makes it all understandable. It would be, he would love for that machine to work, and he's just saying, trouble is it doesn't work. But he didn't really think about it.
For other reasons. Every theory that you make up has to be analyzed against all the possible consequences and to see if it predicts anything else. And this predicts something else. If the Earth is moving this way, more particles will hit it from the front than from the back. If you're running in the rain, more rain hits you from in the front of the face than in the back of the head because you're running into the rain. And so as the Earth is moving in this direction, it's running into the particles, rather, and running away from the ones that are chasing it from behind. So that more particles hit it from the front than from the back, and there would be a force also sideways whenever there was any motion.
So he's basically saying that you would build up pressure. So as the faster you move, the more pressure you would build up in front of you of these particles, and there would be some sort of resistance to your movement, like an atmosphere or something, and that wouldn't explain space gravity thing. So the obvious, one of my points is that light doesn't have this problem. Light goes around other photons. So let's go back to the school of fish analogy, and let's just have this simple rule, okay, that the schools of fish, okay, swirl among each other, or all the fish can go in one direction. Now if two fish just meet each other, they go right past each other. So if the fish are not going sideways, they're going straight at you, they have force because the fish could hit you directly. But if you're also just a fish, you'll just swim around each other and do absolutely nothing. Nothing will happen. Now in the real circumstance, I'm not saying they're swimming around each other, they're probably kinetically smashing into each other, and the kinetic energy goes right through to the other side on both sides, and so there's just an equal and opposite reaction event. But it doesn't really, no point in getting into the complex dynamic. So, but that's how you can understand what would happen here. So if you're moving, what that means is the matter you're made out of, okay, a higher percentage of the photons are moving in the direction of your movement. That's how you're moving. That's the spiral argument. You're eating space because the photons are a larger percentage of them are moving in this direction than in the non-direction. So basically, to simplify it, what's happening is there's fish, that's the pressure of the photons coming in, moving singularly at the object. And there's a certain number of extra fish now moving in this direction when an object is moving. So when an object has momentum, there's more fish moving in that direction. Fish that the other fish would go right past. So now they're not hitting as much. So in a sense, an object, Einstein would say the object gets more massive. My theory would say, no, it gets less massive and more fish just go through it, which compensates exactly proportionally to the relationship to speed. So it's basically just saying you're deconstructing a school of fish that's spiraling, okay, and now when the single fish comes in, he crashes into it, right? So you can sort of understand that. Let's say the fish are all swirling around each other and a single fish flies into that school of fish. Its likelihood of hitting another fish is very high. But if the fish are swimming and coming right at him, singularly, he'll go right through them. So you can sort of understand that, right? I don't need to do this over and over again, do I? So the point is mass is a reflection of how swirly the fish are. So the less swirly the fish get, the less mass you have. You get that? You get that? You can probably get. In directions, though, it's directional. Obviously, if a mass of fish all are moving the same direction at me, I'm going to know it has mass, right? There's going to be no doubt about it because I'm made out of matter. Okay, I'm a structure, so it's going to annihilate me. The single fish are going to come in and smash into my matter, the photons I'm made out of, because they're going to be moving sideways. They're not going to be coming straight at me. All right, so basically the theory is that the only way that matter, that energy, the photons, can affect other photons is when the other photons are trapped in an orbit, when they're trapped in a mechanism that gets them spinning inside the school of fish. Let's see, is there another? I mean, I've already said it this way, but I think you can kind of understand that mass becomes directional as all the fish start moving in one direction. So the fish have mass when they're swirling. We all will call matter, okay, having mass. But it only has mass in one direction when they're all moving the same direction. Then all the mass, all the E equals mc squared, is moving in one direction. The mass is retained in the form of its energy. Obviously, if you're behind the school and it's running away from you as fast as you can run, you will never sense any mass from it because it's not coming at you. And the same would be true from any other direction. You can't get to it, okay, because it's moving the speed of light, and you can't move faster than the speed of light, so you could never realize its mass. So mass disappears from observation when photons are all moving in the same direction. I think you can understand that the only place that has mass is now the direction they're moving toward, right? All other directions are now kind of without mass. You know, except like when it goes through, like when a photon goes through the gravitational field of a planet, what's happening is that pressure, okay, that's the same as the gravity pressure. Every now and then a fish is able to hit another photon from the side, but it happens rarely, and it's even a smaller influence than gravity, which is one of the weakest of the forces. Okay, I really don't want to get into that conversation. Just stay with the school of fish thing and understand that as the schools of fish start moving in a direction, that they start getting less and less disorganized, less and less noise, and that anything coming this way has more chance to go right through it. So that's all you have to understand, is stuff coming this way has more chance of going right through it, okay, because more of it's moving this way, and the pressure from behind would, you know, substantially be the same. I mean, obviously there's a few more photons running away from you at the speed of light, so you'll never catch them, so to speak, but obviously if they turn, you got them nailed. So as soon as they do that turning thing, you got them. Yeah, so I really don't need to say any more. I think the simple rule that photons can't not impose energy effects on each other in direct contact with each other, that it's a neutral event, explains this. Okay, it's a neutral event. The amount of this mass that now has been converted into straight line movement in this direction is eliminated as a pressure function, because this pressure will go right through that part of the mass. That part of the mass is irrelevant to the forward movement. What I'm basically saying is two schools of fish can go right through each other if they're both moving right toward each other. They'll just intersect each other, go right through each other, and there'll be no mass effect, no pressure buildup, no collisions, no crashes, no energy release, so to speak. The energy will go right through to the other direction. The masses will go right through each other. So I'm saying E equals mc squared, and m is a function of energy. So yes, m equals energy. It's all made out of photons in eccentric directional patterns. You can call those spirals. I think spirals is a fine word, but whatever. They're trapped in configurations that give them mass to other photons. There, enough. So anyway, this is just disappointing that Feynman was such a douchebag about this. I mean, that he didn't understand. See, if Feynman right now in this video, if Feynman was thinking, hey, wait a minute, these things are all made out of stuff moving the speed of light. If he was actually thinking of the quantum particles it was made of, he would have realized that from quantum particles perspective to quantum particles perspective, this movement becomes quite irrelevant. And Einstein failed also because Einstein thought about riding a light beam